all fanboys. It's time to get back to the Geek Speak radio show on TalkZone.com with your hosts, Henry and Romo.
And we're back on Geek Speak Radio Show. We dropped out for a second, technical difficulties there. Probably because, like I said earlier, everybody's online playing the video games and the Madden and everything else. They're taking up our bandwidth. So we're talking to Ryan Van Cleave, Unplugged. My Journey into the Dark World of Video Game Addiction is his book. Ryan, you back with us?
I am still here. You bet.
Okay, so what I was asking you before we dropped, is texting, all the social media, chatting, all those things, would that be considered or should be considered an addiction?
I think that it can be just as much as video games are. It's just a slightly different type. I actually, I came up with a title for what I do these days. I call myself a digital addiction consultant. And that means I don't have a medical degree. I have a PhD, but it's in American literature. But via my experiences and the conversations I have with people, I've learned a lot about this. I learned about social networking. I've as a freelance writer, I've done a lot of designing and work on video games, but as well on social networking sites, things like this. I really understand them pretty well, and there's a lot of similarities on how they work and how they function. And also, too, there's a lot of carryover. I'm sure that if you guys have ever been on Facebook or MySpace, you've probably been inundated with, help me paint the farm in Farmville, or so-and-so wants you to, shoot this guy in Mafia Wars.
The Mafia Wars, yeah.
They're bringing the games to the social media sites because that's where people are. We've got, 500 million people on Facebook now? We've got 40 million people playing Farmville every day. So that's where the games are going, and that's where the advertisers are going. So, yeah, I think that there's a lot of the same types of compulsions and things that could potentially be addicted to people. It has to do with community and connection and belonging and a lot of things that we just don't tend to get in the real world. That's what video games can offer us, but that's also what these other things can say, they can offer us too. And just to be clear, I'm not saying they're all bad. I'm not saying they're all evil. I think that they're terrific and really useful. Video games can be fun. You can learn. They can help you through dexterity. For people who are physically injured in some way, soldiers maybe who've lost their legs, they want to run again, play Warcraft or a game like that. We have a character and you can feel it. It's liberating. It's exciting and great. But there's a limit for every single person's kind of got a limit on how much they really probably should be playing. It's going to be different for everybody. And you just have to have a sense of where it is. And because it's such a new phenomenon, because most of us haven't had parents who've played video games or done these things, we never had good role models. We don't know what a good relationship looks like with video games or these technologies. We're making mistakes. A generation or two down the road, they'll have watched us make our mistakes and do things right. They'll have watched our kids do it right and make mistakes. And, they'll have some pretty good sense about what's a healthy kind of perspective. Like if I say I'm going to go drinking tonight, I know 2 beers, and after that I shouldn't be driving, and I kind of know where I'm at. I don't really know where it's at for gaming, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about it. It's going to be different for everybody, and it's the sort of thing I just want people to pay a little more perspective on, a little bit more attention to, and just think about and watch each other a little bit more, because I think that if we all pay a little more attention to it, we'll make some better choices, and hopefully we won't have anyone else on a real or metaphorical bridge, with a tough decision.
I asked you earlier about the medical community, but I'm going to tell you a personal story. I won't mention any names. I know a guy who at work is constantly playing World of Warcraft. And, like you said earlier, he always says, well, no, I went to lunch, I went this, I took a break and all that. But instead of working, that's what he's doing. He's playing. You talked about the medical community. Should they start recognizing addiction and doing something about it?
Absolutely. I talk to a lot of groups. I go to medical conferences at least about once a month, and I talk to behavioral therapists and counselors and people about, like I talked about earlier, about, ways in which that they can better reach people with these sorts of issues. But I also talk to schools and businesses and try to educate them on some of the sort of, situations on how people hide their behaviors, and also, too, how we can help them. Because there's a lot of people who abuse the games but are not full-blown addicts. That still doesn't mean they have a healthy relationship with it. And it also, too, if you're stealing hours, because that's literally what it is. You're stealing, your employer's hours and time and money from, if you're playing while you're supposed to be working. And that's not a good situation just on that level. But also, too, to be doing it for gaming. You've got some problems at that point. And employers, they should try to help people. I believe that as human beings, we should try to help out anyone that we have the ability to help them out. And you bet, I think that they can do certain things. There's a certain point where, it's really on the person themselves or their family, but I think employers can certainly help. And there's also things they can do in terms of technology safeguards to discourage this sort of thing, just to make it not even an option. And that will help as well, too.
It's probably, like you were saying earlier, part of the medical community also. Employers, they probably think, okay, we'll just stop playing, and they think it's that easy, but it isn't, really.
That's right.
So
a lot of people say that. Yeah, they say that. Yeah, just quit playing. Well, just tell the drunk to stop drinking. It just isn't feasible.
How can we make people more aware, besides your book and interviews like this? How can we make people more aware of that this is an actual addiction, an actual problem?
Well, I think that we need to just have more stories about it in the news, and not just the ones about the South Korean couple from a month ago or 2 months ago who let their infant child starve to death while they were playing in an internet cafe a simulation game about a family raising a simulated infant. Just stories like that to just make it seem like a bunch of freaks on the other side of the world. We have issues here in this country. I'm really excited about this the story about the NFL guy. Guy who basically blew away 2 years of his prime and extremely limited, physical NFL career possibility. And, that's in the news. A lot of people are reporting it now. I think it was really good news when Andy Murray, the big, British tennis pro, got dumped by his girlfriend Kim Sears back in December because he had a 7-hour-a-day PlayStation habit. This is a world-class top 10 or top 20 tennis player who's spending, 6-7 hours a day, reported by his manager, playing PlayStation. Right? He's blowing off his girlfriend so much that she finally just dumped him. I think that the more stories that we have about that it's not just these geeky fat kids in basements, it's high school kids, losers, or whatever you want to think of them as, that are having problems, that it's real people. I think that that's going to help us understand it's a serious addiction and there's a cost to it. The British newspaper, The Sun, just did a study this year where they talked to a couple thousand British men, adults, and 1/3 of them said they'd rather play video games than have sex with their spouse or their partner. And if it's a brand new video game, which connects with our story today about, Madden coming out today. If it's a brand new video game, 75% of them would choose the video game over having sex with their partner or their spouse. This is an issue that's not just for kids. It's across the board. And just the more awareness we have about it, about, who's going to be doing it, which is basically anybody, but also just what's at stake. I think that's just going to help be part of our public consciousness. And I think we'll just be paying more attention and hopefully be able to make a little bit better choices.
The name of the book is Unplugged, My Journey into the Dark World of Video Game Addiction. Ryan Van Cleave is his name. Ryan, when you write the second part that you mentioned, make sure to call us, email us, and we'll get you on, and we'll definitely talk about that when that happens, okay?
I'm happy to do it. Thank you so much for having me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for coming on.
You bet.
Okay, so that's Ryan Van Cleave. Again, his book is Unplugged, My Journey into the Dark World of Video Game Addiction. There's a link on GeekSpeakRadioShow.com if you guys want to get it. The Amazon link is there also.
Geek Speak Radio Show will be right back.